And welcome to a special edition of the Bill Kelly Podcast. This is a budget podcast. This is just mere moments, of course, after the finance minister rose in the House of Commons and presented the 2025/26 budget. And I want to give you my impressions of it. I wrote some notes as I was listening to Minister Champagne and Prime Minister Carney talking about this and opposition folks. So we're going to get to that. But I also want to invite your comments. So please jump on with your questions, your comments in the chat, and we'll try to address as many of those as we can. This is really just kind of a first impression thing. There's a lot more to be, I guess, ascertained and analyzed here, although everybody's going to do deep dives into this stuff, of course, over the next little while. Essentially, though, just to get the response, is from the opposition parties. Pierre Poilievre says he's not going to support the budget. I know, what a shock. The NDP said they need to study it. Blanchet said he's probably not going to support this. But right now they only need possibly 2 votes, and I'll explain that why later on. Because there's, especially with minority governments, there's always some drama that goes on, and that has happened again here today. And we mentioned after the first election back in the spring when Carney was elected, and of course just fell short of a majority government, that there was going to be some horse trading and some negotiations that went on between some members of the opposition, whether they be Conservatives, NDP, or whomever, that may be enticed across the floor and over to the Liberal side. And it looks like that may be happening as we speak. The announcement about it came just moments ago, of course, and we'll get into that too. And because it's not precedent setting, it has happened before. Belinda Stronach being one of the most notable. She was a member of the Conservative caucus, of course, and crossed the floor to join Paul Martin's government. As a matter of fact, she joined Paul Martin's cabinet. Probably one of the enticements. Scott Tyson was another guy who was a Conservative from the Maritimes, who again crossed the floor and became a Liberal and a member of the Paul Martin government then too. It's gone the other way too. David Emerson was a member of the Chrétien government, and then later the Paul Martin government. He was a minister in that government, and then Harper won the election, and lo and behold, David Emerson became a Conservative and was immediately appointed to cabinet. And Joe Camanisa was another guy from Thunder Bay, I believe it was. First of all, he was a member of the Martin government, but he voted against the Civil Marriage Act, the Same-Sex Marriage Act that was passed by the Liberal government then, and was booted out of the caucus for that. Then, as a member of the Conservative, after he was elected, he voted in favor of the Harper budget. Well, that was the final straw, so he was just gone altogether, and it eventually became a Conservative. Never appointed to the Harper cabinet, though. So this happens back and forth. But it's interesting in this dynamic right now because, as we mentioned, it's one more vote, technically, possibly, for the Carney government here. Now, we're told, and again, this is when the rumor mill is going on, right? That there could be more people that could cross the floor. Well, Harper, rather at this particular stage anyway, Carney only needs a couple more people to do that, and then he's got himself a majority. So it's interesting to see what's happening. But let's talk about that later on. Let's just do some deep diving and some analysis as to what's going on with the budget right now. The thing that I heard from most of the pundits here is essentially the numbers are too big. The deficit is way too big. Well, it's not a surprise. I mean, there were estimates that it was going to be $100 billion in deficits. The final number, of course, is slightly lower. It's $78 billion deficit this fiscal year, which is lower than a lot of economists thought. Liz has joined on. Liz, great to have you. Thanks for joining in and popping in here. She says the response is a bit disappointing even from the analysts. I agree. I was quite shocked. I was doing the flip back and forth between the CBC and the CTV coverage of this, and almost unanimously they would say, well, this is terrible. It's not what we were expecting. It was supposed to be transformative. It's not. I was disappointed in their analysis, and I'm leaning more towards some of the other folks that got their 2 cents worth into this, and we'll talk about some of their comments in just a couple of minutes too. John, hey John, thanks for being with us today. John says we need to find a way to push our media to actually provide facts relevant to the information they put out there. Garbage in, garbage out. You're right, and again, I share your disappointment about their analysis on this. I get the sense sometimes, and I think we've talked about this on the podcast, that they've already determined exactly how they want to respond to this, because we knew a little bit about what was going to be in the budget, and they're focusing again on that big number, that deficit. And the $78 billion deficit. Well, we knew it was going to be big. We knew it was going to be larger than even the Trudeau deficit. But as I mentioned in a previous podcast, and none of the pundits picked up on this in the coverage that I saw today, and not because I don't think they got it. I think they just didn't think it was important. It's where you spend the money. These guys just don't seem to get that. Governments to run efficiently have to spend money to make money. They have to spend money to cover costs. Some of it is in infrastructure costs. Some of it is in operational costs. And Carney was quite clear to say we're going to differentiate those two. So in other words, a lot of this new spending, most of this new spending, as a matter of fact, is going to be on infrastructure. It's going to be on big projects, fixing roads, building ports, these sorts of things that are going to generate income. They didn't seem to take that into consideration, which really pissed me off, quite frankly, to listen to some of the coverage on this. Carmen, hey Carmen, you're banging on, you're singing my song here. Says that the deficit, the size of the deficit doesn't really matter. This really is a matter of how they're going to get out of this and what's the projection long term. Born for Battle says $60 billion reduction in operating costs is huge, and it is. That's something that you can grab onto and say, hey, you said you were going to reduce costs, and that's the operational cost. And that's the sort of thing that's going to have an impact on you and me. Audio says, how much does a deficit actually affect the average consumer? Well, not much. You're absolutely right, especially not in the spending. If it's for great social services that offset the impact. If you, by the way, governments, not just the Carney government, but just about every government, they borrow an awful lot of that money for these huge infrastructure projects, okay? So it's not going to have a huge impact on you and me as taxpayers, but it could long term because it's going to increase revenue, which is going to actually offset some of the other concerns and some of the other costs, right? Ruth jumps on board. Hey, Ruth, great to have you with us on the podcast to say. Waiting to hear the details of exactly what's going to be happening and how the budget shakes out. I think we all are, too. Hi, Wade. Thanks for being with us today. I don't care about the spending in these budgets, only what it does for the country. Well, and we talked about this on a previous podcast, Wade. Where you spend the money is important. Some governments, short-sighted governments, simply say, well, we're not going to spend it all. Then you're not going to generate revenue. You're not going to generate growth. What I noticed from this budget that I think everybody just seemed to miss here is what Carney had talked about doing, and I think what he accomplished with this budget today, he wants to encourage private sector money to come and invest in Canada. John, I think you got the point here too. John, thanks for being with us on the podcast. $42 billion was not relevant yet. It's influencing $78 billion deficit that's put out. You want to get Canadian companies, Canadian investors to put their money back in here right now because they're not doing that. Governments can't spend everything. They can't buy everything. They can't build everything. You've got to get private sector investment. And if you create an environment for that, then you've got yourself a winning budget. And they have essentially they've drastically reduced the tax rate for businesses and corporations and manufacturing entities in this country, basically saying the more you invest in this country, the more factories you build, the more people you hire, the more Canadian products you put, the lower your tax rate will be. That's a great incentive for these companies to continue to grow in this country. I don't know why these guys on TV just don't get that, or maybe they just don't think it's relevant. I'm tired of the negativity here. There's some positives that can come out of this. Robin, you're jumping in with us, too. That's so great to get this input here. Robin says, we are basically rebuilding the country right now. Some don't get 2 buckets worth of the budget. It takes money to get from under the United States. And that's a great point, because that's what we talked about, Robin. And I think that's what this whole thing about making manufacturing and industries in this country more competitive. As a matter of fact, the tax rate, just based on what we were saying here about lowering the tax rate, the more these Canadian companies invest in Canadian businesses, is actually about less than 1% if you take all those incentives into place. It's about 12% in the United States right now. So we are not just more competitive, we have a competitive advantage over the United States right now. That should go a long way towards stopping companies from saying, hey, we're closing up shop and going down to the States. So that's what I think that an important point. And sadly, again, nobody seemed to want to talk about that on the TV coverage today. And geez, I don't know. Grant, I think you're on the same page as we are right now. Thanks for being with us here. It says mainstream media pundits are not chosen for their expertise. No, and I get that. They want to say something that's going to be controversial, and they think that's going to generate TV ratings. No, it's not. What it is misleading the public. And I think that really what we need to do here at this stage is understand the severity of what we're facing these days and understand that it's going to take time. It's so great to hear you people jumping in here with your comments, and I'm glad you're jumping in on the chat here to talk about what's happening with the budget. And I'm not going to beat the drum and say, hey, the government's right. There's some very concerning things about what's going on here. But, as Carney has talked about, and as anybody who's ever faced financial situations, whether it's in your personal life or whatever, you can't turn it around overnight. You can't flick a switch and say, there, that's all done. Which is really what the conservatives have been talking about for the last little while. Poilievre's, simplistic ideas to this. Well, build more homes. Yeah, okay, sure. It's not that simple. You've got to find the revenue. You've got to get Canadian companies to incentivize them to start investing again in here. And I think this budget goes a long way towards doing that. You get, the pundits, and I saw that on CBC and on CTV, they get lost in this. It's like, the shiny object in front of them is, whoa, look at that number for the deficit. Yeah, every freaking country runs a deficit. You want to know what the U.S. deficit is? It's what happens. It's what you do with the money and how you invest that money. And Carney has talked about that from the day he decided to run for the Liberal leadership and subsequently become the Prime Minister. It's how you invest the money. That's really what comes down to this right now. And okay, it's not going to turn everything around in the next 6 months or 12 months, but it's a 4 or 5 year plan, as Carney talked about, and as we heard from Champagne during this. Hi, Peggy. Great to hear from Peggy. Thanks for being with us here. Says, hello, dear Bill. Just hope no matter what political persuasion people are endorsing, they continue to see that Canada has to stay strong and build Canada strong. We have to make and hold on tough. And I think that was the theme. Peggy, you're bang on. That I think we need to be patient about this and don't expect that, when they say it's a transformational budget, I think it is. Notwithstanding what Rosie Barton says and notwithstanding what the other panelists were saying, it is a transformational budget because it's a different approach to what we're supposed to be doing here. Past governments don't do that. Past governments just understand that we have to cut, and that's going to bring, the tax rate down and everybody's going to be happy. No, it's not. You can't just do that. I mean, there are cuts. There are some severe cuts that are happening here, especially in the civil service. The numbers here those are big numbers too. A number of civil service positions are going to be lost. Some by attrition, others by, I'm sure there are going to be some layoffs in this too. And I know that the public service unions don't like to see that sort of thing, but that's one of the ways that governments can control their spending. I want to see government spend money that's going to benefit Canada. And that doesn't mean that you throw away some of the programs that we, I think, hold dear in this country, like the dental plan, like the pharma care program, like the food program, like the daycare program. Those are all, by the way, untouched, and I'm glad that they did that. Glad that they understand that there has to be a balance. Quality of life is so important, and the government does play a role in that too. Robin jumps in and says, Carney and the Liberals are not pocketing the money. Trump is pocketing the money for himself. Yeah, no kidding. It's a different mindset altogether, isn't it? Hi, John. Great for you to join us here on our live stream and our quick assessment of what's happening in the budget. It says the U.S. dollar is the world currency. What will happen if the world drops U.S. currency and we're heavily tied to that currency? That discussion is ongoing. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. I think there was a real concern about that, especially in some of the European markets, but they seem to have understood that, look, we're going to have to just handle this with what's going on right now, hoping that there's going to be some sort of a change in the U.S. political climate. I'm not so sure. Carmen, great to have you with us here. Hey, says we are in the best position we've ever been when it comes to what's going on in this government right now. And that's what Carney was all about, is trying to make us competitive again, because we weren't. We just relied too much on the Americans and said, look, when the shit hits the fan here, we're going to be okay because we've got America beside us. Well, we don't have that anymore. So we have to start rowing our own boat here, and that's going to take some time. Sally, hey, Sally, thanks for being with us. So what are your thoughts, Bill? Lizzie May already says she's voting no because of the emissions cap removal. Not going to lie, I don't have a good feeling about it passing. It's going to be nip and tuck. You're absolutely right. I'm concerned about that as well. Not surprised about Elizabeth May because they, as a Green Party, seem to be focused essentially on green issues, which are important. Don't get me wrong. There has to be an environmental bent to what's going on. But at the same time, you can't be oblivious to the economic impacts and what's going to happen here. We need to grow the economy. And if we have to relax some of these other things, in other words, to incentivize that economic growth, then those they're tough decisions. I grant you that. But this is governing pragmatically as opposed to idealistically. And that is a sea change from what we've seen from past governments. Where are we going here? Born for battle. Many countries are reducing the U.S. debt exposure. Absolutely right. And we need to do that too. Where am I going here now? There's so many folks jumping in here. This is great. This is one of the reasons why we wanted to get on here, to get your thoughts on this and to give you a sounding board and a platform to express some of your concerns. Zaria says, I find it really disturbing that conservatives are far more focused on tearing our prime minister down than they are on working to build this country's resilience. Well, that's Polyev, isn't it? That's what he's all about. He's jealous. He's still ticked off that he lost the election, and he's going to do everything he can to try to take down the government. And, we've talked about some of the misinformation and, quite frankly, some of the lies that Polyev has talked about. And he's done that with his first assessment of what's going on here in the budget, too. Sylvia asks, is this going to pass? That's the trillion-dollar question. I hope so. Nothing is for sure. They need 3 votes, but even the NDP now are suggesting that they may abstain. Some of them may abstain for that. In other words, even if they don't get the votes, if there are a few people voting, then there's a possibility that this thing is going to pass. I don't think anybody wants an election. Well, besides Pierre Poilievre. That's really what it comes down to. And I think they're going to do what they can to try to, if not vote in favor of this, just not be there to vote against it. Girl says the net operating deficit at $18 billion, the other $60 billion is a factor as well. Antonok says, I love the green issues, but we need to make money to exist as a nation. Money comes from either natural recourse or industrial sectors. Balance is the key. And what they're talking about here with some of the capital spending and the infrastructure spending is to start enhancing some of that. The mineral extraction, the Ring of Fire. You've seen the Ontario government commercials for that, by the way. They were on during the World Series. It's going to be the key to Ontario's future. They're not mining anything there yet. It's not happening. There are roads to be built to those mines. There are transportation costs. There's the mining itself. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. And that federal incentive and that federal directive and that federal commitment is one of the things that's going to get this done. We've got to stop talking the talk when it comes to infrastructure, when it comes to economic spending and infrastructure and capital investments. Stop talking the talk and walk the walk. And that's what this government's going to do. But there's a price tag for it, people. And the conservatives don't want you to know that. They just want you to look at big numbers and say, it isn't this terrible. No, it's not. It's about time that we had a government that invested in Canadians and invested in the future and incentivized other Canadian businesses to not just stay here, but to invest here. Audio says, would PP be better from the Green Party? No, so why let the government fall? I don't know exactly what's going to happen with the Green Party. I just know the Conservatives are going to vote against this, so there's going to be some old-fashioned horse trading here. Marilyn says if PP forced the election, he would lose. Again, it's that simple. Conservative Party is horrible with PP, and I'm tired of his rhetoric. I think a lot of Canadians are feeling that way, but there are people that are still angry. They're pissed off. They're frustrated with their lifestyle right now, and they're looking for a government that's going to be able to do something about this. And I just saw some of the Conservatives talking about this and saying, well, there's nothing in this for the average Canadian. Yeah, there is. Yeah, there is. There's the extension of some of these benefits that are going to be happening. There are going to be assistance programs for people that are impacted by tariffs, and there's going to be job creation incentives. All right? If you're having a problem right now trying to put food on the table, pay the mortgage, et cetera, getting a good paying job is a major step in the right direction to do that. We're not doing that right now. We need to turn that around. And again, governments don't make jobs. Governments create the environment for jobs to be created, and they create the environment for manufacturers in this country to expand and to grow, build more factories, hire more people, make more Canadian goods. That's the way. That's the reason, and that's the focus on trying to get us ahead these days. And I think this government gets that. I'm sad, really, that it seems that a lot of the political pundits just feel, well, I'm on TV, so it's my right and it's my responsibility to just criticize everything. No, it's not. It's to critique it. Understand the difference here? Critique means to assess and offer an opinion as to the good, the bad, and the ugly about these, not just simply, well, it all sucks, which is really what the mindset seemed to be here. Peggy jumps in again. Hi, Peggy. Price tag is retroactive to what has been done with our growth for years. Antok says, indeed, your points are correct. It's really important to see the distinction between what we wish for and what we need. Stability is the new problem here that we need to encourage. The past government didn't get that. That was a Liberal government, too. I know. I love how Poilievre and his minions, try to say, well, this is the same old Liberal government. No, it's not. It's a different mindset. Some of the players may be the same, but there's a new captain on this team, and they're taking a whole different approach to this. And maybe that's what this government needs. It's certainly what this country needs right now. Superlane says, the Bridget is a horse remedy. It's needed. So I'm ready to suffer to get us back on our feet. I think Canadians are understanding that too. Ken, hi Ken, thanks for being with us. The NDP can ill afford an election this soon. They're healing from such a bad result the last time. I believe they're going to abstain to avoid an election. I think you're right. That seemed to be the way they're going right now. I think this is going to pass because, and there'll be debate about this and some argument about this, as there should be. But it's not time for another election. I know, Polyev is so bent on trying to grab power right now that he'll do anything right now. That's not what Canadians want. And he's not listening to Canadians. He's just, again, stuck in his own ideological lane here. And that's not good for the country right now. Hi, Wade, jumping in on our conversation as well, says, don't be surprised just how PC would love to have Carney as leader. Don't cross the floor. I mentioned that in a previous podcast. It was a couple of weeks ago, I guess. They're criticizing Carney for this, that, and the other thing. If he had come out of his job and said, you know what, I'm going to run as a conservative, these guys would be building statues for him. And they're saying, well, he's stealing conservative policies. No, he's not. They're stealing his policies. What Mark Carney is doing now is what Mark Carney suggested when he was the Bank of Canada governor. It's what he did in England and the UK after Brexit fell. This is Mark Carney in action. And the Conservatives don't like it because it's effective, and it's the sort of thing that past Liberal governments never had the courage to do, and Carney has the courage to do it. So let's see this for what it really is here. Where are we going here? Hi, Beverly. So several PCs are ready to cross over. I've heard that too. So I don't know if it's going to be a mass exodus or just what's going to be going on. I can tell you this, an awful lot of Conservatives, quite aside from the budget, are still pissed off at Pierre Poilievre. I think they've lost confidence in him as a leader. I think they know in their heart of hearts that he's going to win this leadership review. I mean, how can he not? It's going to be in Alberta. They have no alternative right now. But a lot of people in that party may simply say, look, I just can't live with this guy anymore. I've got to have to do something else. And I think those discussions about crossing the floor are happening as we speak. I don't know how far it's going to go, but I don't think we've heard the end of this just yet. Gilbert, hi, Gilbert. Thanks for being with us. Says just as long as they take lumber, steel, and aluminum from Canada. And this is one of the things, Gilbert, that I think Carney has talked about. It's creating this environment right now to grow within. We have to get away from dependence, but at the same time, we have to grow within the country here too. I know the government has taken away some of the provincial tariffs that have been in place for the longest time. The provincial governments have got a lot of work to do here too. They all talked about Team Canada and everything, but they're still being protectionist in a lot of ways, and they've got to come on side. From Ontario, Quebec, I don't know if you're going to get much in the way of assistance from Quebec these times, but we need to stick together on here. Alamison says Carney is PC, not Liberal. Carney is in that zone. What he is he's a small C conservative. He's a fiscal conservative, just like Paul Martin was, just like John Chrétien was. And that's what's needed right now. The idea of liberal, conservative, etc., meaning if it's fiscally responsible, that must be a conservative. No, it's not. The best government we've had, the most fiscally conservative and responsible government we've had in this country in the last 50 years was when Jean Chrétien was the prime minister and Paul Martin was the finance minister. And we had a great economy. We had an economy that was actually doing things, building things. Jobs were created, and still socially responsible to offer a number of programs that would help Canadians health-wise and otherwise. We need to get back to that, and that's taking a huge sea change here from the way we've been doing things in this country for about the last 20 years or so. Ricky says if an election does happen and the Conservatives are defeated again, does that spell the end for PP? Well, that's a decision they're going to have to make. You're absolutely right. Just about how the Conservatives are going to respond to this. Sylvia counters the point that Gilbert made just a minute ago, says Carney is Liberal, just like myself. I'm center-right about some things, center in others, and center-left on others. Sometimes I'm even far left about some things. That's what they call it, the big tent, right? That you don't have to be stuck on an ideology. And that's one of the things I've kind of liked about Carney and what I've seen in him so far is he's able to pivot. He doesn't get stuck on an ideology. He'll adapt to the circumstances and the situations. Look at what just happened here with Trump or with something else that's going on in the world. How can we adjust to try to do that? It's like a football coach at halftime. If you simply say that's a game plan, it's not working. We're losing by 4 touchdowns, but we're going to stick to the game plan. No, you make changes and you adapt. Carney is doing that. And I know some people are not comfortable with that sort of change, but it's necessary. And this is what the Prime Minister talked about. And I think we have to accept that this is the way we're going to be going now for the next little while. We need to have that sort of ability to pivot and say, okay, let's talk about what worked and what didn't work, and let's change what needs to be changed here to make us more competitive. These are big numbers. And Carney talked about this from the get-go. Yeah, you're going to be surprised by the numbers. The deficit's a big number. But, if it's being directed in the right spot, you don't want to see it go down some political drain. You want to see that it's going to be spent effectively. And if we're talking about this 18 months, 2 years from now, and we're talking about, look at the job growth we've had. Look at the Canadian companies that have reinvested in this country right now. Hey, we're in a much better position than we were before. Then you're going to say, hey, you know what? It was worthwhile. But again, it takes time to do that. And this is the formula that's needed. And I know the Conservatives will say, well, Carney hasn't done this. He's been in a job 6 months. He's been on the job, and 2.5 months of that, the government wasn't even sitting. They were in their summer recess. So let's be pragmatic about this, okay? This is the game plan. This is the roadmap that we need to follow right now, and this is what they talked about. Michael says, can we now introduce legislation against profit gouging? I wish. I wish. And it's not going to happen for a couple of reasons. First of all, Poilievre's team, some of his strongest advisors, are former lobbyists for the grocery industry, for the Loblaws and people like that. So, they still think it's all the government's fault. They don't believe that price gouging is going on, and they're still trying to go back to carbon tax as a major incentive. It's all crap, of course. But, them that are conservatives simply say, yeah, he's got to be right because he's our leader. Well, he's not right. He's not. So I want to understand that there's got to be some open-mindedness about this and some frank discussion about what's happening here. That it's not all the government's fault. Yes, there is profiteering that's going on. We found that to be the case. Remember the price-fixing scandal that went on with bread, and there's a lot of indications that may be happening with other products as well. They're not the sole concern here. They're not the only ones that are to blame, but there's got to be some open discussion about this, and you got to take the blinders off, okay? Giovanni says, hey, PP would go 0 for 2 for Carney if there's another election. George Costanza, I just missed the comment here. Just want my screen. Now we're back now. Okay, that's good. Carney is Canada's biggest tax dodger. I want to mention that. No, he's not, okay? Again, that's effing hort. You want to believe the BS and the lies about what's happening here, go ahead. Carney's finances are an open book. He's a guy that was in the private sector and made a lot of money, and justifiably so, because he's very good at what he does. Whether it was with the companies he was in, the boards of directors that he was on, he's a guy that learned the craft and did it well. I would ask the other question. How does a guy who's only been a member of Parliament or a backbencher for most of those 20 years all of a sudden end up with a net worth of over $8 million? Now, it was Harry Truman, the former U.S. president, who once said that, show me a politician that got rich when he was in office, and I'll show you a crooked politician. That was Harry Truman said that. But you look at Poilievre's financial statements and his financial wealth. He got that kind of money by being a backbencher. I'm shocked and surprised about that. So if you want to start throwing stones, let's open that up to everybody who's in right now, and just talk about how they're attaining their wealth and what sort of side deals and who's backing whom in situations like this. Adam says, we're not saying people in Quebec are not on board. We doubt the bloc only. And by the way, that's a good point. I know that a few of you have jumped in with some of the chat comments here about Quebec. They're not bad people. They're Canadians. Don't assume that what Mr. Blanchet is saying here as a member of the Separatist Party, which is really what they are, that he speaks on behalf of Quebec. He doesn't. Quebecois are strong Canadians, nationalist Canadians, and proud Canadians. There are some people that want to separate. There are people in Ottawa that want to separate. There are people in Calgary that want to separate. They're the minority, and that's not the voice that should be listened to right now. I wish there was a stronger voice that spoke for Quebec's best interests here, as opposed to the political interest that people like Blanchet have. And we'll see how that parlays out, of course, in the next couple of weeks. So let's not divide ourselves here, okay? Quebecois, Albertans, BC, we're all Canadians, and we all have a common interest here. And what we need here is a central government, a federal government that understands that. And, there's going to be a different point of view. People in BC look at things differently than they do in Nova Scotia, as they do in Quebec, as they do in Ontario. and that's fine. That's we have to understand that there's going to be different points of view, different interests, but we should have a common goal here. And the common goal here is make Canada better, make Canada competitive again. Whereas you get a guy like Poilievre whose main goal is I want to become the prime minister. We got to get rid of that mindset and people that are thinking that way. Lindsay, I got to finish this off. Lindsay just says Nova Scotia MP Chris D'Entremont has apparently resigned from the Conservative Party. We had heard rumors, Lindsay, to that point that he was having in some discussions with the Liberal government about possibly crossing over. I don't know if the word got out about that, but he has officially resigned from the Conservative caucus. He has not resigned his seat. He is still a member of Parliament, but there is speculation that he may join the Liberal caucus. And just as we finish off here today, just what we've heard, and again, this is all rumor and anecdotal right now, is there could be more Conservatives that may jump ship and head across the aisle to join the Liberal caucus. That's not confirmed yet, but we know that there's a lot of disenchanted Conservative MPs in that caucus that don't like the leader. They don't like what he said. They don't like the misinformation. They don't like some of the comments he made about having, Justin Trudeau should be in jail. I think a lot of them are looking at us and saying, "Oh my God, this is the mini Trump. This is the Maple MAGA guy," and they're not comfortable. The conservative ideology, their conservative values may still be strong, but if you don't like the leader and you don't like the way the leader's taking that party, well, there are options, and we'll see what happens with them. Sylvia says, I'm in Ontario. When I first went out to BC, it was a bit of a culture shock. And that's, vive la différence, if I can bring the French into that as well. There's always going to be differences. But at the same time, we have to understand and respect each other's differences and not play on them and not pit one area against another and one province against another, which is what some of these people are doing right now. Well, I'd love to carry on like this. We're going to wrap it up for now. At the same time, though, we're going to carry on this discussion. Like I say, we were only a couple of hours away from the time that the budget was actually introduced. But what I'm glad is happening here is it's got people interested. And I thank each and every one of you for jumping on with your chats here and giving your thoughts on this. We want to encourage this discussion and this debate, as we do, of course, with the podcast all the time. So there's more to come on this in the days ahead as we start to analyze not just the budget itself and the implications of this, but how people are going to respond. Just as we wrap up here, quick note, though, it's important. We keep talking about, is this budget going to pass? The first budget, the vote may not even happen for another 2 weeks because apparently the Parliament is scheduled to go dark next week. They all go back to their constituency offices for a few days. And, between now and Friday, there could be a vote. We don't know yet. There's going to be some discussion about this, but it may actually be another couple of weeks before they actually have a vote on this. And judging from what we saw with Chris D'Entremont, who's now left the Conservative caucus, it might be a totally different political landscape in 2 weeks when they have a budget vote on this. We don't know yet. So there's more to come on this. And to stay in touch with this, we invite you to join us on the podcast each and every day and listen to what we've got to say. And, of course, get your feedback about the things that are happening in this country. This is great. It's fabulous to see so many people in this country engaged in the political process. Apathy was a problem, I think, before. I don't think it's happening these days. The fact that you're engaged and that we're trying to talk about this and we're trying to decipher what's going on. Sometimes, having to wade through some of the BS and the rhetoric that's going on from political pundits, not just from politicians themselves. And it can be a daunting task. So we'll try to sift through some of that stuff with you in the days and weeks ahead. Thanks again for joining us. It's been great to have you with us on this kind of a quick reactionary podcast about what you thought about the budget and how you think the politicians are reacting. More to come on this as you join us each and every day on the Bill Kelly Podcast. Thanks to our producer, Madeline Kelly, for putting this one together for us, and thanks to you for being part of the podcast. I'm Bill Kelly. Until next time, stay in touch and stay informed.